one of the things I saw is it's moved from an epidemic to an endemic.
Mm.
An epidemic is something that's rising rapidly in an area like a disease, addiction, any of those things. Endemic means that it is constantly persistent in that area, overtaking the population.
Wow.
And that's where I think it's shifted. Internet caused the rise of it really quickly and
Yeah,
rapidly.
I
And
remember.
now we're in an endemic, man, where it is constantly reality that we're living in
Yeah.
with these kinds of addictions. Yeah. And this kind of focus in our life of things being overly sexualized. So when you're talking about, man, why is it difficult to live in freedom? Well, it's surrounding us 24
Hey
7.
man, I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing this with me. I've been looking forward to having this
Yes.
conversation, and I know that you and I have had conversations about this topic
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but I
Yeah.
felt that it was time to be able to bring it to others. And
Yes.
one of the things that I just realized right now as I ordered my awesome drink is I just got back from the gym. I took pre-workout,
Okay.
and as I'm taking sips of this,
It's
I'm like,
interacting
I'm
with the
feeling it right
pre-workout.
now. So if I pass out during this
Yes.
conversation, just call my wife and tell her to come and
Okay.
get me. So today, this is a topic that, again, I want to create a space to be
Yeah.
able to allow other men to feel comfortable with what
Yeah.
we're about to talk about.
Yes.
And it's how to navigate this culture that, to be honest, is over-sexualized.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that when we create spaces for topics like this, men can get comfortable talking
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
And once we get comfortable talking about it, then we can move in the direction of freedom,
Yeah.
right?
I love
Because
that.
what we keep hidden, we can't be free from.
Hmm.
And so let's talk about that for just a second. When
Yeah.
we talk about the culture that we're living in, and I know that you say we're pretty much the same age,
Yeah.
but we're not too far apart
Yeah.
in age, and we can relate a lot to what we grew up in.
Yeah.
I think about growing up as a kid, you
Mhm.
had to go searching for things.
Yep.
You know, I remember the top rack at the convenience store was
Yes.
typically covered, right?
Yep.
And this is where the corn magazines were.
Yep.
If you wanted to watch something, it was
Mhm.
either late night on a cable channel at
Yeah.
some point. And if you didn't have like the good package, it was just fuzzy. You can kind of make out
Yeah.
some things, right? Or VHSs, right?
Yep.
We live in a time now where it feels like you don't have to go looking for it.
No.
It's going to find you,
Yep.
right? And so speak into that. Like,
Yep.
what do you feel is happening right now in our culture? And why is it so difficult sometimes for men to live in a way that honors God in these
Yep.
days?
Yeah. I think what you just touched on, man, growing up, where it wasn't as accessible, now it is extremely accessible.
Yeah.
One of the things I saw is it's moved from an epidemic to an endemic.
Mm.
An epidemic is something that's rising rapidly in an area like a disease, addiction, any of those things. Endemic means that it is constantly persistent in that area, overtaking the population.
Wow.
And that's where I think it's shifted. Internet caused the rise of it really quickly and
Yeah,
rapidly.
I
And
remember.
now we're in an endemic, man, where it is constantly reality that we're living in
Yeah.
with these kinds of addictions. Yeah. And this kind of focus in our life of things being overly sexualized. So when you're talking about, man, why is it difficult to live in freedom? Well, it's surrounding us 24 7.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know this. You don't have to go looking for it. It's
Yeah.
coming looking for you now, and it's constantly in front of you. And so, where before, yeah, it was a struggle, for guys, I think this
Mhm.
always has been a struggle.
Mhm.
It is now constantly in front of us where it becomes so difficult to live in that kind of freedom.
Yeah. So let's talk about the time that we're living in.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you don't have to go looking for it,
Mhm.
it finds you. I think of the many times where it was a struggle getting to the point of freedom because
Yeah.
I was caught off guard a lot of times.
Yeah.
I would be on social media, on
Mhm.
my phone, not doing anything, right,
Yep.
that was looking for an image or anything like
Yep.
that. But because the algorithm knows that I'm a male,
Yep.
and the algorithm knows that it's a certain time of day,
Mhm.
nighttime, all of a sudden things will start popping
Yeah.
up. And so if we're not aware of this, we're setting up ourselves for failure,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So what are we living in right now, statistically speaking, and just
Yeah.
what are we seeing in our culture?
I mean, you're talking about 40 to 60 million Americans regularly interacting with this kind of image and this kind of content,
Yeah.
that's constantly in front of us, like as you're talking about that. So I believe it's the Florida Health Educational Institute. Yeah, they
Mm.
were doing research on this and they're saying, hey, this once again is an endemic. Like it's hitting us in so many different ways. 58 to 61% of Americans have at some point recently, and however they're defining that, yeah, have
Wow.
interacted with this kind of content. And it's not just a male issue. Like we think about that a lot
Yes.
of times, but you're talking about, I think, 80% of men, but almost 45% of
Yeah.
women, like 42 to 45% of women. And so I know mainly guys may be watching this, but if you have a girlfriend, yeah, if you have a wife, there's a very real possibility, yeah, that this may be a struggle in their life as well.
Yeah.
Once again, constantly surrounding us in a culture that is overly sexualized. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this becomes a real issue for all of us, and it's the current reality we're living in.
Yeah, you bring
Yeah.
up a good point, and it's a conversation that's not happening enough. I was watching a video, and I can't remember who posted this, but women are struggling with shame because they haven't been given the space to talk about
Yeah.
this, right? And so if it's directed only to men, many times
Yes.
women will say, "Well, something is wrong with me,
Mhm.
right? Because I struggle with this too," and they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And again, what you don't bring into the light, you can't be free from.
Yes.
So just creating a space where these
Mhm.
conversations can happen and is so key. And so, do you remember the first time when you realized, like, man, we're not living in the same time that we were living in as a kid?
Yeah, this is difficult, and we're gonna, unpack a little bit of this. But I think even more recently, like over the past few years,
Yeah.
um, just it was through a book. I think we were reading it together by John Mark Comer,
Mm.
"Live No Lies," and he's talking about some of the lies we live in. And it was the first time I just heard some of that language. It's not even written about sexual struggles, yeah, but just the way he was unpacking, the lies in our culture. I thought, man, this is the reality that we're living
Yes.
in. And although, being I was a student pastor, so working with high school, and junior high students for the majority, or for a long time, yeah, in ministry. And then myself, yeah, being a teenager, like I knew that shift was coming, especially as the internet, social media,
Yes. That's what
all
I
of
was
those
gonna
things
say.
are rising. Yep,
Yep.
YouTube, its accessibility, all of those, technology things, I think made it kind of right in the palm of our hand there,
Yeah.
being able to access that. So we've seen it kind of over the past few decades, but I would say even in the past few years, like it
Yeah.
has just really stood out to me.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I remember that switch. Again, when you're
Yeah.
younger, you had to go looking for it. But when
Yeah.
the internet came out, that is when I would probably say I was in my deepest, darkest
Okay.
moment of addiction
Mhm.
because it was just so readily
Yeah.
available. And it created a space where people could do this and consume content
Yep.
without anyone knowing,
Yep.
right? And private. And now that we have our phones,
Mhm.
well, this is a computer, as we've heard it said,
Yeah.
in the palm of your hand. You have access to anything
Anything. Yep.
for free. And that's what
Yep.
makes it difficult, right? Is, these companies, that's what they're
Yep.
doing, is they're pushing this
Mhm.
understanding, like, man, if we can get people addicted, well, that's billions of dollars that
Yeah.
we're making from ads and all the different
Yes.
things that they're doing, right? So let's talk about this next part.
Yeah.
You shared this with me a while back, and this was a
Yep.
chapter that Dallas Willard know. For those that may not
Yeah.
know who Dallas Willard is, give us a brief,
Yeah.
just a few pieces of information of who he is and where this book came from.
Yeah. So he was a Christian author and writer and a philosophy teacher. So he
Yeah.
had his doctorate in philosophy, and taught at a university in California. But one of the books he wrote is Renewing the Mind.
Mm.
And I believe it's in chapter 4. He The book is not about sexual addiction, or corn or any of that, but he specifically tackles that topic
Hmm.
because he's using it as an example of things that we need to renew our mind, and things that kind of get deep inside of us that we end up believing lies about. And so, man, a great chapter as he's unpacking that, and just happens to use what we're talking about as an illustration.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing to kind of go through and process through as he's unpacking, man, how do we get freedom? How do we see real transformation in this area of our life? And so I love that part.
I love
Yeah,
this
that he's
quote that
talking about.
he, yeah, in this chapter, he talks about sexual urges aren't the enemy.
Yeah.
It's an untrained soul that is.
Yes.
Let's break that apart just a little bit because I think
Yeah.
the wrong focus that we can have as men is that if we pray enough, God will remove that urge.
Yeah.
And it's actually a blessing,
Mhm.
that desire that we have.
Yeah.
The issue is it's when it's directed in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
not our wives or not our spouses,
Yep.
right? And we're putting it somewhere else. So let's
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
that for just a second. When Willard talks about sexual urges
Mhm.
not being the enemy, but an untrained soul is,
Yeah.
what does he mean by that?
Well, you just said that, like, we have to rethink and retrain ourselves, because we're not. And if I could be honest, if you're connected at all to, the church world or following Jesus, we've done a very poor job of this.
Yeah.
But it is retraining our mind to understand sex is a gift from God.
Yeah.
Sexuality is a part of, it's not all that we are, but it is a part of how God has made us and how I believe, that we've been created and we've been formed. So that's the first part. Like you said, hey,
Yeah.
that's not, the desire is not the thing that's wrong.
Yes.
Those feelings that we have of sexual desire towards, you know, um, another person, those things aren't wrong, but it's the untrained soul.
Mm.
So it is where we allow, if you will, like our passions or our wrongly directed desires, I think may be a good way to say that.
Hmm.
We let them go in a place that they should not be going,
Yeah.
or in a season where they should not be going
Hmm.
towards those endeavors. And so, like, we have to retrain our mind thinking about that. Willard, in that same section, I believe he begins to talk about, and this was key for me of just unpacking this, where he said, your desire and your will are two separate things. And we're
Mm.
not taught that in our culture.
Wow.
Really, we're taught, hey, if you want it, go for it because that's a part of who you are.
Yes.
And if you feel that, man, you should chase after that want, whatever that desire may be. But to stop and have someone tell me, oh, no, you actually have a will, the ability to choose that is separate from your desire.
That's so good.
And you are called to train that
Mm.
and to direct that in a way towards what he would say is goodness,
Yeah.
what God has created us for. And so, like, delineating those two things is really key of, yes, you have desires. No, those desires are not necessarily bad, but they can lead us in a place where we're not called to go. But
Yeah.
I also have a will that is separate from that, that I have a choice to say yes to things or no to things. And that will should be directing me towards what we would say is the goodness of God, the good life that Christ has called us to.
Yeah.
And so I'm moving in that direction. So I love how Willard kind of unpacks that and he talks about this.
I love that because to not think of it that way,
Yeah.
where the will and desire are two separate
Yeah.
things, we fall into a victim mindset, a
Yes.
victim mentality.
Mhm.
And that brings us to a place where we're like, I don't have control of this. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is. But there's a reason why scripture talks about that with every temptation, God provides a way of escape.
Yeah.
There's a reason why scripture talks about taking thoughts captive.
Yes.
That speaks of language that we have a choice,
Hmm.
right? Flee sexual
Yeah.
immorality, right? You can't flee unless you have a will
Yeah.
and you're able to do these things. And so God has equipped us with
Mhm.
the ability to be able to do this, obviously with His help.
Yeah.
But those are two separate things right there, desire and will.
Yeah.
And being able to identify that, if you're watching right now, man, it'll
Yeah.
point you in the right direction. And I think it even changes the prayers that we start praying.
Yes.
God, help my will align with yours,
Yeah.
right? Help me in this part right here and help me to know the difference between desire and will. So,
Yeah. I think the other thing that may be helpful to point out there that Willard touches on, he calls it a VIM. So
mm,
vision, intention, and means.
okay.
And he talks about how this is necessary towards transformation. And I love this because Willard's heart was not, he was philosophy, but it wasn't just some lofty idea.
Mm,
Like his whole purpose of actually studying philosophy started off as a minister was, I want to help people be able to change. And he started looking into, how do we change as humans? Like, how does that come about? How is Christ actually formed in us? And then in this chapter, yeah, he's tackling, like sexual desires and those things. But he says, hey, you have to have a vision for a preferred future.
mm,
Like, you have to be able to see yourself. And sometimes we lose this because
yes.
addiction has caused us to be captive and in chains for years. We
Mm,
can't even see ourselves in a
man,
preferred
that's so
future.
good.
And
Wow.
so he's like, you need a vision for a preferred future. You need an intention. Like, where do you want to get to? And that's kind of along with that vision, but intention there of, and I would say this, around this issue right here of, hey, I want to see people as people and not sexual objects.
Mm,
Like, that's the intent of my heart, man. I want to be a person that's loving and doesn't see
yes.
love as just sex.
Yeah.
So like, kind of what's that intention? And then the last thing is means. I know we're going to unpack this in a little bit,
Hmm.
so I don't want to get into that too far, but he's talking about, hey, how do I live this out? What's the practical kind of tangible thing? And all of this is what we need for transformation. I can't just have a vision of where I want to go. I have to have that intention and the means.
Yeah.
I can't just have means like, man, I'm just going to bear
White
down and
knuckle
do
it.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually have to have a vision. Where am I trying to get to? And so he
Wow.
believed these three things together, not just in this specific area, in every area of our life, is what leads to transformation. This is how we are actually changed and formed. And so in this chapter, once again, he tackles this idea of VIM, the vision, intention, and means.
Yeah, I love that. Having a vision for yourself in the
Yeah.
future, and I want to pause there for just a second.
Yes.
what does it look like for people to start implementing a vision of themselves in the future?
Yeah.
Do you think it's, journaling, it's
Yeah.
writing these things down? Is it a vision board,
Yeah.
right? There's all kinds of different ways to do that. The point is I have to have an idea of where I'm trying to get to.
Yes.
I know for me, for years, like I remember feeling like, man, is this the way that life is going to be for the rest of my
Yeah.
life? I'm always going to struggle with corn. This is
Mhm.
always going to be an addiction
Yeah.
that maybe this is the thorn in the flesh, like Paul spoke about,
Yeah.
right? That the Lord has given me. And that was such a lie of the enemy,
Yeah.
right? I believe that a vision is understanding the abundant life that Jesus has called us to, right?
Yes.
We see that in John 10:10. He says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and
Mhm.
destroy. I have come to give you life and life more abundantly.
Yes.
And what I love to say, speaking of that vision
Mhm.
of you in the future, Jesus isn't calling you to an abundant life and just dangling that over your
Yeah.
head and saying, haha, you can't get this.
Yep.
He's showing you a vision of this is what's possible through
Mhm.
me. And so I do believe that a vision
Yeah.
is started, it has to start with us having Christ in the center of
Yeah.
everything. So all right, so let's talk about what we're actually
Mhm.
facing. How does this play out in our
Yeah.
everyday life, right? You gave a really good illustration about a Marvel movie, and I want you to
Yes.
share that with us real quick.
Yeah. So when we're watching these videos around sexual content, like
Hmm.
we don't stop and think about what's actually happening many times.
Yeah.
And so my illustration was, as we've talked about this, of hey, you go see a Marvel movie or maybe like a bank heist movie.
Yeah.
And probably, hopefully, none of us think I'm going to go out like Spider Man and try to swing
I hope
from
not.
webs across a building, or like Iron Man, I'm going to try to fly, or whatever you're doing there. And then the same thing, with like a bank heist, like, hey, I'm going to go actually try to steal millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
We understand, oh, there's a separation from reality there.
Mm.
But because this video content that many times we're consuming, or these images that we're consuming, has like a feel of reality to them.
Yeah.
And once again, like the idea of sex is a part of our lives and
Hmm.
it's a real thing. We're not understanding what's actually taking place.
Yeah.
And so just breaking this down, on the other side of that camera, there's a director,
Mm.
there's producers, there's people
Lights.
in that room, there's lights.
There's
Okay.
a script.
There's a script that's going
Yep.
on. Yeah, there's certain things that are happening. This is not reality. It is fantasy.
Yeah.
It's fiction, right? And there's a director saying, cut, do this again, all of those types of things
Hmm.
to get what they're trying to curate, like a perfect image or some kind of even fictitious image of what is taking place. Well, the danger is we bring that into the real world, into our marriage, into our
Yes.
relationships, into like our sexuality and our sexual experiences. We take something that is fantasy and try to recreate it in the real
Mm.
world. And it just does not work like that. But
Yeah.
not a lot of people are talking about that.
Yes.
And we don't often stop and think, oh, yeah, this was done numerous times in such a way, yeah, to
Hmm.
create this fantasy experience. And it cannot be recreated in reality in that same way, or it is extremely dangerous to do
Yeah.
that. And so I think that is so helpful to realize, hey, what I'm seeing isn't even real.
Yeah.
And then also to see, man, if I have engaged in that in some way and I've consumed this content and then I try to bring that in marriage, that could be really damaging, to
Absolutely.
my connection with my spouse.
Yeah, you bring up. There was a part of Forrest Frank. He was on a podcast. I think it was with Bryce Crawford, and he talked about when he first got married. I believe it was his wedding night. Um, him and his wife, we're going to be together for the
Mhm.
very first time, right? And he did something very aggressive, and she was just like caught off guard. Like, what was this about? And he got really emotional talking about this. He said, just from my past experience of consuming porn, I brought
Yeah.
that into the marriage. I brought that into the wedding night. And he realized in that moment just how much this had messed him up.
Yeah.
And so if we think that this isn't going to affect us in some way,
Yes.
man, that's a false belief that we have, because at some point it will translate, or we will want to bring it into trying to meet that image or
Yeah.
trying to live up to a certain expectation. And honestly, that's a lot of pressure that we're putting on our spouses,
Mhm.
right? That you're supposed to do something
Yeah.
according to what I've seen. That's not the
Yeah.
purpose of you.
Or a lot of pressure on us as guys
Exactly.
that's not realistic.
That
Yeah.
we're supposed to perform
Yeah.
in a certain way. And
Yeah.
again, these guys have taken so much stuff, like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, right? It's unrealistic. And so just having that clear picture of
Yeah.
like, man, this is not real. This is fake.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And being able to identify that can definitely help us in that direction. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this next part. And I'm
Mhm.
excited about this section here. And it's just practical tips.
Yeah.
Okay. For years, you guys growing up in the church, I thought that this was one dimensional.
Yeah.
Meaning that if I prayed enough, if I fasted enough, if I memorized enough scripture, that somehow that was going to take care of everything,
Hmm.
right? And don't get me wrong, all those things are powerful. Let me
Yeah.
make that clear, right? We're both pastors.
Yes.
We believe in the power of prayer. Scripture is the word
Yep.
of God. We believe in fasting and all of those. But I do believe that we have to set up ourselves for success through practical tips.
Yeah.
A while back, I was talking to my wife, and she went to the gym with me one day, and as soon as we walked
Yeah.
out, she was like, how do you even make it and survive at the gym with some of the clothes that these women are
Yeah.
wearing? And I picked up my phone and I said, like this,
Hmm.
in between sets, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why? Because the desire and the urge, it's still there.
Yes.
I just need to direct it in the right place. And so, what are some practical tips that you feel like, man, we could help our guys that are
Yeah.
watching right now put in place to help them navigate this
Yep.
over-sexualized culture?
Yeah. So I'll give you a practice that I've been implementing over the past few years that has been a game changer. And it's kind of along what I mentioned, some of Willard's writing. But the first is I identify the lie.
Mm,
And so this is key. And I do this kind of practice I'm going to give you often. And sometimes, I can go a day or two without it really affecting me. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but I identify the lie. And so when I'm feeling that temptation, I'm seeing something that I shouldn't. And like you said, we don't even have
yeah,
to go looking for it, but it just pops up. I'm
yeah,
at the gym or whatever that is. Identify the lie and I just say this: I live in a culture that has lied to me about my sexuality
mm,
and it's
that's so
broken
good.
and I have added to the brokenness. I say that, right? It's not just out there coming in. I have added my part of the story
Mm,
to this brokenness. And so then I identified the truth. Sex is a gift from God, and other people are Yahweh's image bearers. So
wow.
I just say this out loud, or I'll say it to myself kind of, I'm at the gym or wherever I'm at. I'm watching a TV show, something pops up. Hey, Yahweh, sex is a gift from you, and that person that I'm seeing, they're your image bearers.
Hmm.
And then I tell myself, like, hey, sex is for connection, intimacy, and pleasure with my wife.
Hmm.
And I want to honor you, God, and I want to honor Sarah with that.
Yeah.
I say that entire thing.
Wow.
Sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, I don't want to say the whole thing, right? And sometimes it's happening so much like you said, I'm at the gym and I'm not even looking for something, but just it can become a visual issue there, and I just say it over and over again. Like, I've trained myself to say this. It becomes kind of, if you will, a breath prayer, or just like a declaration, yeah, that I am saying over and over again. um, Sometimes out loud, like sometimes in my own mind, sometimes in my heart, because I have a lie that I've believed,
Yeah.
which is other people are sexual objects there for my pleasure. I need to replace it with the truth, and then I need to remind myself, hey, what God has given this for.
Mm,
And like I said, for me, I believe that's connection, intimacy, and pleasure with my spouse, with Sarah. And so I want to honor her with that. I want to honor God with that. This has become revolutionary for me,
mm. It
and it's
sounds like it's
changed it.
almost like checking yourself,
Yeah,
right?
it
And
is. Yep.
reminding yourself, like you said, you have a vision, you
Yep.
have an intention.
Yep.
These are the ways to put
Yeah.
that practically into
Yeah.
place.
And we know this from like studies in neurology, neuroplasticity, and all of this. Your mind, if you will, gets like ruts and grooves,
Yes.
going down an old dirt road,
Yep.
and you see the wheel tracks, right? And it's hard to get out of those.
Yeah.
You have to intentionally get out of them.
Yes.
And that's what this is doing, is it's saying, hey, I realize there's a rut or a groove in my thinking.
Yeah.
I need to get out of that and replace it and start driving kind of on a different track, if you will, in a
Yeah.
different way. And I need to replace that with something. So this has been helpful for me.
Yeah.
And then I know, we've talked about other tangible, practical ways that we've really applied in our
Yeah.
life to get freedom here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think of in my life, one of the things that I've had to identify is anytime that I'm alone with my phone is usually a recipe for failure, especially
Yes.
late at night.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, during the day, I'm texting and so on, but I'm talking about specifically at nighttime. The other thing that I would identify early on is that I couldn't go into the bathroom with my phone
Yeah.
because even though my intentions weren't wrong,
Mhm.
we all want to scroll while we're sitting
Yeah.
there, or we want to text while we're on the pot, right? Not to get too graphic. And it was always one of those things where it's like, man, I'm alone, something pops up, I'm on social media watching something else, and it was just a perfect recipe for me to just give into something.
Yeah.
So just being honest about those
Mhm.
things was so key. I think of accountability software,
Yeah.
right? Covenant Eyes is one
Yeah.
that's been around for a very long time, and there was a season of my life where I needed that.
Mhm.
Another app that I've been getting very familiar with here recently is Quitter, Quittr. They didn't pay me for any of this, but I just want to bless you guys with some of this. So Quitter is really cool because the moment that you open it up, you're able to check in and admit, like, how am I doing right now?
Okay.
Have
Yeah.
I relapsed? Am I
Mhm.
still going strong? And then it gives you an update and it shows you these are other men who feel like you right now.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that it does is the longer that you go without relapsing or looking at stuff, right,
Yep.
intentionally, it starts to show you how your brain is rewiring
Huh.
and it gives you a percentage.
Yeah.
And it almost motivates you to be like, come on, I got to keep going.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're about to relapse, there's a panic button that you can hit. And this is the crazy thing about it, it flips the camera so that you can see yourself.
Yeah.
When you download the app, you put a vision of where you want to go.
Okay.
And it
Yeah.
reminds you of that. Remember that you said this.
Yeah.
And it just does something to you to be like, I got this. I
Mhm.
can keep going. So again, we need Holy Spirit power and
Yes.
help for sure. But man, practical tips go a very, very
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling you earlier, we have two choices, you guys. We either can hide under a rock
Yeah.
and live there forever, right? Shout out paradise.
Yep.
um, or we can follow the model of Christ and we can put and implement practical
Yeah.
tips and just say, Lord, the over sexualization that I'm
Mhm.
surrounded by is not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
So help me to navigate through this by putting practical tips in place.
Yeah. And I mean, I've reached out to you. I know for me, just when my wife has to travel and with her job, she has to do that sometimes or visiting family. Like my immediate go to when she gets in the car, heads out on the plane or whatever that is I'm texting a few of my close friends and saying, hey, you can ask me at any point this week, or whenever Sarah's going to be gone. You can text me, pray for me, think about me, like reach out. Hey, am I looking at anything I shouldn't? Trying to get into anything that's not going to be productive or healthy. So you have to know, hey, what are those triggers? What are those, if you will, boundaries and guidelines
Yeah.
that are really going to help me to do that? And I would say, hey, guys, if you're married, especially with young kids, we have a larger family, you do as well,
Yeah.
is you can feel that disconnect. And this addiction is a quick fix. It's a false one, but it feels like a quick fix to a connection
Yeah.
or intimacy when you and your spouse are just really busy. And so, man, you've got to take that into account of it feels like intimacy and connection. It is not when I'm looking at an image
Mm,
or some kind of video thing. And so that's a trigger of, oh man, Sarah and I are feeling disconnected. How do we invest back in our
that's
marriage?
really
Like,
good.
how do we make sure we have that connection? Once again, all these triggers that we're talking about, really important to know those
Yes.
so that then you can address, hey, what's going on? Am I tired? Am I hungry?
Yes.
Am I stressed? Do I feel disconnected from my spouse? And then how can I address that in a healthy way instead of an unhealthy way?
Yeah, that's really good. So let's take some time right now. We just want to encourage you. If you're watching right now, man, I speak from personal experience that wherever you find yourself right now is not the end of your story.
Yeah.
I think, and I got emotional sharing my story here recently. You can find the video here on YouTube. But the question I was answering is, what does freedom feel like?
Yeah.
And I got emotional because I remember there being a time where I'm like, Lord, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to that
Mhm.
point. And you've been with me through
Yeah.
this journey. You've been
Yes.
with me from confession after confession and
Yeah.
just telling you, hey, I need help here, or I'm
Yeah.
noticing that this is, an entry point where the enemy is
Yeah.
tempting me, right? Um, what do we want to leave those men with that are watching right
Yeah.
now? And you've made it to the end of this video and
Mhm.
you're like, man, I'm desperate for change right
Yeah.
now. What would you
Yeah.
say is some words of encouragement that we could leave them with?
Hey, the first thing that I would say and most important is you have to believe you can change.
Yes.
And I know I mentioned this earlier. I'm telling you, it feels like you can't. And you've tried 100+ times, right?
Yes.
And maybe you've gone weeks or months of finding freedom, or maybe even a year, and then you feel like you get pulled back into this. I'm telling you, change is possible. If you don't believe that, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have got to get to that place once again, if that's a declaration, if it's journaling,
Hmm.
if that's saying that out loud to a friend,
Yeah.
even when you're not there yet, you're speaking it out,
Yeah.
like as that vision of the preferred future. Like you have to believe that, hey, the behavior, the addiction that I am currently facing is not my final reality. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
not the end
Hmm.
of the story, it's not that end picture yet of where I'm going to be at.
Yeah.
And you've got to start to see yourself, yep, as a renewed person, as a
Yes.
person that does not just sexually objectify other people,
Yeah.
but that you see them, yeah, as I believe God's creation. And so I want to leave you with that. Like you can change. Like this is possible
Yes.
to find freedom, to find transformation. I think what you have said is really key there. There is that, if you will, spiritual component, like those prayer kind of
Hmm.
practices that we have seen, but it will also take intentionality in the physical
Yes.
is so key there. And we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the areas that I feel like in the church we failed
Yeah.
is how to be able to
Mhm.
practically put these things in place, right?
Yep.
I love that analogy that you use of retraining our brains, right? Neuroplasticity, not to
Yep.
get too complicated,
Yeah.
but just win the moment is what I would tell you.
Yes.
Don't get overwhelmed by the future and just thinking like, man, I got to make it to the end of the week.
Yep.
Focus on the moment. Give that moment to the Lord and just say,
Yeah.
I need you here and now, right?
Yep.
I need your strength right now.
Mhm.
I think in my mind, like it's always on repeat. I need you. I need you. I
Yeah.
need you. Not getting too
Mhm.
comfortable is another thing, but
Yep.
man, freedom is definitely possible. And I'm a living witness. You're
Yeah.
a living witness of
Yes.
this. That man, we're creating this space to talk about it because we want to encourage you here in this moment. So, um, as we're ending this
Yeah.
conversation, what do you think is one practical tip that we can take away, or just something that is valuable?
Yeah. Well, I would encourage you, and I'm probably like a lot of you, if I hear great conversations like this, hopefully this has been encouraging. I want to go do it all,
Yes.
and you just can't.
Yeah.
What we're sharing in these, few minutes here, this is not, like we've said, this is not like, oh, we've done this in the past few days. This is decades
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah,
Oh
of
yeah.
work, of a process, of steps forward and then steps back, like all of that. And so my challenge would be, hey, what's one thing maybe God is leading you to? Jesus is asking you to focus on one thing that stood out,
Hmm.
that you're like, hey, that is one step that I could take.
Yeah.
I can't finish the marathon today, but I can take a step. And so, what's that one step, this week of here's one thing I could implement? I don't know what that'll be for you. If that's
Yeah.
a conversation with a friend, if it's, yeah, noticing some triggers and maybe writing those down, if it's creating kind of that vision, of a
Hmm.
preferred future, whatever it is, don't try to do all of them. I know
Yeah.
you're going to want to, but just choose one of them and say, hey, for the next few weeks, this is what I'm going to focus in on, is this one thing. And I'm just going to keep coming back to this. And, if I mess up, if I stumble, I'm going to
Yeah.
keep coming back. I'm not going to give up. And then as you do that, you're building upon it,
Yeah.
so that you don't just stop there, but you build upon it. But don't try to tackle it all. Find one thing and say, hey, I'm going to do this one thing this week, or maybe even over the next few weeks, to try to create a foundation.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, thank you guys for giving us your time. Follow, here on YouTube. Just type in AC Fight for free. You're gonna find that on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere.
Yeah.
And I share practical tips on how to move in the direction of freedom from a porn addiction. And so, thank you so much, man, for
Yes.
being here with
Loved
me.
being
I
here.
really
Love this
appreciate your
conversation.
time, and we'll talk to you guys in the
Yep.
next video.
Good.
I think so. What do you think?